Welcome everybody to the Digital Nomad Sessions. My name is Mitch Atta, your host, and I have a very exciting guest today. We're going to be talking about a lot of amazing topics and a really important one as well, especially for those getting started. So I'd like to welcome Jodie Dewberry to the Digital Nomad Sessions. Jodie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mitch. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I'm really excited to dive into today's topic, which is how to transition to the digital nomad life from a normal career and consistently creating content while on the go. So let me give you a bit of an overview of why Jodie is such a great person for this topic. So she was originally from the UK. Jodie has been location independent since 2017. As well as running one of the most popular travel blogs in the world, Jodie shares her secrets of building and sustaining a location independent lifestyle via her YouTube channel and the Location Anywhere community. So, Jodie, I guess the best place to start is before we dive into more of the specifics, maybe let's sort of have a bit of a high level conversation about how being a digital nomad works with with creating content and that lifestyle, because we're always on the move, and if we're not sort of building our businesses and creating that content, then the lifestyle is not going to last for so long. So maybe share a little bit about your experiences and what we need to be thinking about when it comes to that.
It's definitely tough to do. It feels a little bit like you're on a treadmill sometimes because everything I do kind of depends on the content that I create, but the content I create depends on traveling. So I have to really find this balance of moving around and traveling and creating the content as I go, and also kind of just balancing the two and making sure I don't do one more than the other, especially for my travel blog as well. It kind of really depends on traveling and moving around. So that is really, really tough. For me, I guess it's still kind of a work in progress because things are changing all the time. The nature of the work I do it means that things are always changing. I have to be quite reactive to things that are going on in the industry. So it is kind of a little bit like you have to adapt constantly. You have to be willing to change your plans. I find it very useful to schedule in travel days and work days and try and split my time. So I know, okay, maybe I'm really busy today, but next week I have 2 full work days where I can just sit and work. And these are the projects I can work on. And then I know next week I'll be out traveling again. So this week I can really focus on my work and not worry about the travel side of things.
Absolutely, such a great point. And do you find that you sort of tend to go towards one rather than the other? Is there something that you sort of, mm, I guess, instinctively just go to?
Probably work.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
was
think
wondering that because I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to feel guilty about one or the other, whichever one I'm not doing. For a very long time, I'd feel guilty about not doing more of the other one. So when I was working, I felt like guilty for not going out and seeing the destination I was in, felt like I wasn't traveling enough. I could spend 2 weeks in Tokyo, but really it's only 1 full day of travel if I spend the rest of the time working. And people would be like, oh, you spent 2 weeks in Tokyo. What did you do? And I'd say, well, I only saw these handful of things, and I'd feel guilty about not like immersing myself more in the destination and making the most of my time there. But then on the other hand, when I was out traveling, I felt bad about not working on my business and not working and not taking all the opportunities I could to get stuck into work and focus more.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such an important conversation because I think, I guess, being a digital nomad is sometimes glamorized, that we're always out exploring and adventuring and, being in different places and like really embracing the culture there. But the reality is sometimes we just need to get our heads down and keep working and continuing making enough money so we can continue living that type of lifestyle. So yeah, I really love that. And maybe we can continue diving into more of that in just a moment. But let's sort of rewind back a little bit to, I guess, when you were deciding that you wanted to start this lifestyle and live this lifestyle. What were some of the main things that you learned during that period of transition from a normal career into being a digital nomad? And yeah, how did you navigate that process?
Wow, that actually feels like a long time ago, but I just felt like so much was going on, and it kind of felt like it was in slow motion, but also felt like very fast at the same time. And it is a huge step jumping from, I was working for a a massive publisher in London in the UK full time before I became a digital nomad. And then for me, that was a massive step going from corporate office life to Thailand. I went to Thailand first, and I was just suddenly in Thailand, surrounded by all these new shiny things, and also trying to build a business which wasn't making me enough money to really live off at the time. So it was tough, and I think the biggest challenge I faced really was balancing my time and knowing when to work and when to travel. And it was also really, really hard not having a routine at the beginning. Obviously, one of the things that drew me to this lifestyle was the lack of routine and the flexibility, and how you can, you can just get up and go. You can change your surroundings as much as you like, which I really like. But I think coming from a very like structured corporate job, my day was very, very structured. My week was very structured. My whole year was kind of planned out in advance, I guess, to, just having time and figuring out what to do with that time and how to use it in the best way. That was a bit of like a shock to the system. I think
Yeah,
that's something a
absolutely.
lot of people don't really think ahead for. They think about, how am I going to make money? Where am I going to go? How am I going to deal with the reactions of my family, especially if they're not too keen on it? And then maybe they don't think about the productivity and like the organization side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good point. Whereabouts did you stay in Thailand? That was my first destination too.
Chiang Mai, of course.
Right, right, awesome. And yeah, just to sort of talk about that a little bit more. One of the other speakers and a really good friend of mine, Dylan Willis, he actually talks about the freedom that's actually within structure and
Mhm.
routine. So I think for me that was a big thing was going from working the exact same thing, having a structure, having a time and place that we had to be somewhere to do our work, to then having so much freedom, so much time that it wasn't until I built in some sort of routine and ritual and habit and gave myself some boundaries of when I needed to get the work done that I actually started to be productive and efficient in what I was doing. So yeah, it's an interesting transition period that you need to navigate and such an important point to cover for us. So okay, so a few things we're covering is we need to be aware that when we have a lot of freedom, sometimes we can get off track, and we need to sort of keep ourselves on a leash, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is there anything else during that transitional period that you learned that you think would be important to share?
I think for me personally, and I know from speaking to other people, one of the hardest things during that time was actually dealing with my friends and family's reactions. People who didn't really know about this lifestyle, weren't familiar with it, didn't know anyone else who had done it before. And some of it was quite negative. Like people who are friends of mine, family members, I mean, some people were supportive and they get it now. It was like a case of showing them rather than telling them. But at the time, they were kind of like, why are you throwing your life away? And it's really easy to let those comments get into your head and let them, like, you end up with a lot of self doubt, or you end up thinking, am I throwing my life away? Is this going to be worth it? Am I doing the right thing? And I think it's really hard to really stick with what you want when everybody around you is telling you that it's not possible, or that it's a bad idea, or that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Definitely, 100%. I can totally relate to that. How did you overcome that? Did you get around people who were already doing it? Did you focus on more self-development? What were sort of the things that you did?
So at first, I tried to talk to these people. I tried to explain what I was doing, and I quickly found that it was just pointless, and that it would be a case of showing them over time rather than trying to explain it now. So I tried not to talk about it. And when they asked, when are you coming back to the UK? I would just say, oh, probably next July. I'd just say something just to change the topic. And in my head, I had a set goal of like 1 year. If I can make this work in 1 year, great. If I can't, I will go back to London, or I'll figure something else out.
Mm,
And I just thought, okay, if I want to make this work in 1 year, I really have to stay focused, and I have to surround myself with the right people. I have to take this seriously. And it kind of actually helped me to get where I am now, I guess. And I mean, being in Chiang Mai, being around other people doing the same thing, talking to them, knowing that they had the same experience as well was so, so, so useful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love to share talks and events like this, to know that, you know, there's literally everyone's going through the same type of problems that everyone else is, who are getting started on this journey. And those who have hopefully, well, some of them are still navigating them. I know, like, at times, even, you know, 5 years later, I still need to navigate some of those questions from friends and family. But yeah, I guess we're all in this together, and it's important to build that community. So yeah, that's really cool. So I mean, there's some really great things to think about when transitioning. And obviously you navigated that successfully, because we're here now having this conversation. So I guess the next best place to go is talking about building a brand and creating content around that brand as a way to attract your ideal clients and customers and a loyal following and things like that. So maybe if we can dive into that topic now and talk about, you know, some of the tips that you have about creating content consistently. I think what makes a difference, from my opinion, for those that are doing really well and those that don't, is consistency is a really big part of it. But also, you know, how everything that you've learned over those years as well.
Sure. I mean, consistency, that's a really interesting thing that you said, because I feel like this whole time, consistency has been like a really big battle for me, actually. And I've always thought, oh, I can do more. I should be more consistent. But sometimes, again, sorry, like what I said earlier about you need to be able to adapt all the time, that applies to things like this as well. So I would have 6 months when I'm very consistent with when I post content on my blog. And then suddenly that doesn't work for me anymore, because I know I have like certain trips coming up where I won't have Wi-Fi or other projects going on. So I need to balance everything a bit better. And being able to adapt and say, okay, consistency for this 6 months means 3 posts a week are going up. But for the next 2 months, it just means that I'm going to update an old post once a week. And it's totally different, and it's a totally different amount of work. But it's consistent for a set period of time rather than consistent forever. You know, it's not like you don't have to have something set in stone, but it is always a good idea to have some sort of consistency for sure. What was I going to say? I think for me, it's also the biggest challenge as well has been finding what's realistic for me. And again, finding that balance in how much work do I want to be doing versus how much work do I need to be doing, versus like what is the optimal amount of work for me to still be able to travel, to still enjoy the work that I'm doing, because I've been at points where I've been trying to do too much and I've not been traveling as much, and then suddenly I'm not enjoying the work I do anymore because it's not actually giving me the lifestyle I wanted, because it's taking up all my time because I'm trying to hit these goals and publish more than I should. And if I'm not enjoying it, then for me, there's no point actually doing this. I may as well be doing any job or staying in one place. So it's kind of finding that optimal like consistency for you. And it might not be what everybody says is the best amount to do. It might not be what studies have shown is the sort of optimal number of times to publish a week. But if it works for you and you enjoy it, it gives you the lifestyle you want, and it's obviously helping you meet your business goals, professional goals, then that's kind of like the sweet spot. But it's really hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. You're really hitting on the head of all of the challenges that we face internally when we're on this journey. I'm exactly the same. You know, what's consistent for me one part of the year is totally different to another part of the year. And I think a lot of us who are here right now watching and listening to this are probably like you and I, Jodie, like high achievers wanting to, you know, get the most out of life. And we follow people who say they're creating, you know, 100 pieces of content a day, and you know, we're struggling to make 2 or 3 bits of content a week, and we want to do more and more. It's just like the natural human instinct of wanting to do more and more, right? But yeah, you really hit it on the head of like, you know, we need to feel like do what feels right for us. So maybe like let's just take a period of when you were creating, let's say, you know, you talked about 3 pieces, 3 blog posts a day. What were some of the action steps in your mind that you were thinking about? Okay, I need to sit down and I need to plan this day, I need to create that day. What are those sort of tangible things that you did during that period to be producing that content?
It's generally when I've had like slower periods of travel. So again, it goes back to the whole balance of travel days and work days. I would have like a week staying in one place, in one city or whatever, and say, okay, in this week, I'm going to do these things every day. So I might publish one blog post every day. I might upload to Instagram every day. I might, whatever it is I need to do, I'll say, okay, what can I do consistently every day that's going to help me? And at the end of the week, I'm going to be really happy because I would have made this much progress. And then I'll go travel for a week. So I know that I've got that balance coming up. And then obviously the amount of content I'm creating while I'm traveling is less. But for that week, I've got like a to-do list, a daily to-do list that's the same every single day. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't have to think about what I have to do. I think a lot of the time when you have all these ideas and you can create unlimited amounts of content, it's really hard to know what do I do next. So if I can have a list of this is what I do every single day and I follow this formula, it's really easy to get that routine and that consistency, and it's like it eliminates the thought process a little bit.
Definitely. When you're traveling, are you like jotting down ideas and like things to try and remember?
Yeah, so obviously not everybody's a travel blogger, but for me, my process is generally I do research beforehand. So I plan out my trip and I plan out what content I think I want to create, or at least some themes. Then when I'm on the trip, I make notes and I take photos based on those themes. But also, if anything comes up, I'm quite flexible with adding that in as well. And then I'll have a Google Doc with like all the main themes that I want to cover, or the main titles, or like the working titles for blog posts. And as I go, I'll add notes to each one. And then I'll go somewhere and I'll just sit down for like a week or 2 weeks and I will fill them all out and I will plan out the content more thoroughly. And then I'll just come back and edit them over time.
Yeah, amazing. I love that process. When you're like, let's say you wake up in the day, you know you've got, you know, you're going on this trip to this location in a new place that you're staying. Are you intentionally thinking about, okay, I need to be writing down stuff and like remembering stuff as I go, or is it sort of like it just you come up to a situation, you're like, oh, this might be a good spot? Is it more intentional, or is it sort of like more intuitive?
I would say it's about 50-50. Also, it depends on the destination because everywhere's a little bit different. Like some places, I kind of know almost exactly what to expect when I get there, or there's set themes that I definitely want to write about. Other places, I might not know much about it at all. So I kind of go in and it's more intuitive in that I see, okay, what's here? What could I do with this? What are my ideas? And then I'll put my ideas down. And then maybe during the trip, I'll actually do some keyword research and like see how feasible those ideas are and whether it would work. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like
awesome.
a mix of the two.
Yeah, cool. I love that. That's really cool. Amazing. We're covering some really great stuff here. Is there anything else that you think is important to share when it comes to creating content?
Um, I think it's really important not to be too hard on yourself. Everything always takes longer than you think it will. And the longer you do this for, it actually takes longer to do stuff sometimes, I think, because your standards become higher, you become more of a perfectionist, you put more research into things, you put more time into like tweaking the little things to make it the way you want it to be. When you first start, you can get quite a lot done actually. Like there's that initial period where you're learning, then you get really good and you like sort of you perfect your system, but then you learn something new or you develop a new style or you start adding something to everything and then suddenly you're back down the learning curve again because you're still learning to do that each time. And each I find each time I get to like the top of the mountain of like a certain format, I add something new because I have a new idea or I learn something new that's going to make it better for my audience. And I think it's
Yeah.
easy to be hard on yourself thinking it's taking me too long, I should be faster at this, or it's easy to think it won't take you very long because you do it all the time, but everything always takes longer than you think it will.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always evolving. That's really cool. Um,
Yeah.
amazing. And, you know, the next question I have is, you know, we've probably touched on a few of them now, but are there any big mistakes that you see people making when actually you know, first of all, transitioning to digital, becoming a digital nomad, but then also creating the content while on the go as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've made most of them myself. I think you can sort of separate those mistakes into like the business side of things. So things like not really having a plan for where you want to go and not thinking about how your business can evolve or what it might look like in the future. So you just kind of, especially for content creators as well, like you might just be putting stuff out there, but if you don't know why you're putting it out there, apart from the fact that it's because you want to put like content out, then it's kind of you end up in this spiral where you're doing a lot of work and maybe not seeing the results that you'd hoped for. And then also, I see a lot of people when they're transitioning to like nomad life, making, I guess, like living mistakes, like lifestyle mistakes, like not budgeting for things. A lot of people struggle with the work life balance, that kind of thing. And just sort of I find a lot of people end up at a point maybe in like a year or 2 years where they feel like they're kind of just floating around and they lose direction and they lose purpose, and maybe they stop looking after their body, maybe they stop looking after their mind and not challenging themselves outside of work. And you kind of get into this routine of travel and work, and then the rest of your life kind of just disappears. And I think it's easy when you're so focused on what you're doing and doing what you love that you do forget about healthy eating and fitness and relationships and all those kind of things. And then one day you might just wake up and find yourself like lonely, unhealthy, and unhappy.
Mm, absolutely. So many amazing points. One of those that you mentioned at the start there was budgeting. Like the amount of people that I've seen who go from living like a, you know, on an $80,000 a year salary to then becoming a digital nomad, probably making $20,000 to $30,000 in your first year if you're doing well, and can't sustain that lifestyle because they're still trying to live up here when they were making 80,000. So yeah, it's such an important point, and it's actually what I find amazing on that topic is you realize how happy you can actually be on such a low income when you actually, you know, in the trenches starting this type of lifestyle. Because like, I'm not sure how much you're spending per month in Thailand, but I know when I was there, I was spending less than probably $1,500 a month and living very comfortably and loved every single second of it. So yeah, there's a lot of amazing things that can come from being in that space, but you've got to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
Jodie, so we've covered a lot of amazing things. You've brought up a lot of challenges that we go through and given everybody a lot to think about. I think to finish this off, I'd love to maybe dive into some of the positive stuff. Like what are some of the amazing things that have come from, you know, living this lifestyle and, you know, the growth that you've had in this space?
I mean, there's so many positive things as well. We've obviously touched on the negatives a little bit. But honestly, like I've never once regretted my decision to live this way. It's given me so much more than I ever thought I would have. I mean, I've been doing this nearly 3 years, and last year I actually bought a house, which is something that I could never even like fathom when I lived in London. So it's really given me the financial freedom as well as obviously like freedom to move and go and do the things I love all the time. And something I really love about it that I explain to people all the time, I think, who don't understand this lifestyle is I love travel. And when you have a job, you have to always, you have to really like decide where you want to go because you only have so many days a year that you can travel. When you live like this, if I want to go to Vietnam and spend some time exploring Vietnam, I can go there and I can just work my way around while working on the days in between. And I don't have to travel all the way there and then travel all the way back home and find the time and prioritize my time when I'm there because I can just keep going back or I can stay there until I've seen all the things that are on my list. And I think that's really amazing.
100%. I love that as well. As like, you know, some people go to, let's take that Vietnam example, go there for 5 days. They travel from the UK from it's probably 15, 16 hours, maybe more. Whereas as a digital nomad, you could go there for an entire month, spend 5 to 7 days traveling and exploring while still working and, you know, having a much more relaxed time there and embracing the culture a little bit more. So
Exactly.
yeah, such an important point. Amazing. Jodie, thanks so much for taking the time to share your amazing wealth of wisdom with everybody here today. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who want to continue the conversation with you. So where would be the best place for them to go?
Well, I'm pretty much all over the internet. So obviously, I have my travel blog, which you can find at alajode.com. And then, if you are interested in more of the behind the scenes of the digital nomad lifestyle and living this way, then I do share all of that, the highs, the lows, the how I do it, like over on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/alajode. And of course, there's Location Anywhere, which is locationanywhere.com. That's a community for location independent individuals and aspiring remote workers.
Amazing. And we'll link that up down below as well. So yeah, once again, Jodie, thanks for joining us. So great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.